I want to continue to talk a little about the Ukraine, but I also want to do so in the context of Biden's State of the Union. Now, Biden got some applause when he talked about the evils of Putin and the horrors of the Ukraine, which, by the way, he's right about to that extent. And of course, some on the left are trying to make it seem like conservatives are pro-Putin. No, we're not pro-Putin. We're pro-Ukraine. But the point we're trying to make is that Biden is utterly inept in dealing with this. And you can't have a foreign policy based on illusions. I mean, here's a report. The U.S. is now hoping to, quote, train Ukrainian troops remotely. What, by Skype? Zoom calls? Is this going to be an effective strategy to get the Ukrainians to effectively fight back? Here is an article in the New York Times, of all places. Biden presents China with intelligence on Russia's troop buildup, hoping that Xi would step in and speak out against it and use leverage against Russia to block it. Well, what does Xi do? He turns over these reports to the Russians. So here's Biden, who is obviously dumb enough that he thinks that he's, buddies with China. Why? Because he's taken all this money from China. China understands, and China is very consciously trying to create a rival axis to America. Let's call it the Iranian, Turkish, Russian, Chinese axis, to counterbalance the power of the so-called free world. And so the idea that you can somehow trust the Chinese when the Chinese have every reason, I made it really clear that they have common cause with the Russians, not exactly common cause on every given issue, but common cause in building this sort of new world order. So Putin knows what he's doing, and Xi knows what he's doing. My question is whether Biden knows what he's doing. Now, Biden's State of the Union was quite a spectacle, and I was really chuckling to see the heckling that Biden got from Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now, some people, including some Republicans, were a little offended. Oh, this is inappropriate behavior. It's not inappropriate behavior. First of all, their basic point, leaving aside what they said, was the emperor has no clothes, and that's a fact. Well, but it's not the right occasion to point this out. Well, let's look at the right occasion. Here's Biden, and he's about to launch into the same big fat lie that he has told about his son Beau, as if his son Beau was killed on the battlefield, and as a prelude to how he understands what the troops are going through and he understands the horrors of war. Now, the two have nothing to do with each other. It's a bogus narrative, but it's a bogus narrative that apparently people like Lindsey Graham and others want to go along with. And so they're like, oh, don't interrupt Biden. He's telling a moving story. He's on the verge of tears. And so, but I think what Lauren Boebert's point is, listen, let's talk about the actual 13 Americans that you, Biden, helped to get killed in Afghanistan. That's your responsibility. You didn't even mention those people. We're hearing more nonsense about Beau. And I guess it's a relief you didn't bring up the smartest guy Hunter. So I think that it's time for Republicans to take the gloves off. All this kind of thing, we've got to sort of mindlessly cheer. No, we're not going to mindlessly cheer. Remember all the Democrats staring stone-faced when Trump recited his achievements? Remember Nancy Pelosi tearing up the State of the Union address in front of Trump, or behind Trump, I should say? So that's how they behave. Well, this behavior is going to come back to haunt them. And if there's any practical significance coming out of all this, I think it comes actually from a side note from Joe Manchin. He was interviewed about the Build Back Better. This is kind of Biden's only remaining domestic initiative before the midterms. And he was asked, is there any way to sort of revive? This is the media like lobbying him. Is there any way we can get some of the Build Back Better? And Manchin's answer is no. He goes, are there any pieces of Build Back Better that he can see passing? Manchin's answer, no. Not until you get your financial house in order can you do that. He goes, to me, it's all about inflation. So essentially what Manchin is saying is Biden's given us this runaway inflation. The country is economically in trouble. This idea of spending, a few trillion here, a few trillion there. By the way, all of that would only fuel inflation. Manchin knows elementary economics. So even though we got the typical kind of Biden song and dance routine at the State of the Union, in reality, the Biden agenda has been stopped in its tracks.